I've got to do is a little business here for me.
See, I have a writing up right now, but it's too heavy to carry down. Memoirs.
Oh.
We have a class. See, we live in Century Village.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big complex, 15,000 people. It's a city within the city of West Palm Beach.
Okay.
And we have all kinds of classes, all kinds of provisions allowed. Buses, all this kind of stuff. Swimming, everything there. Shows, everything. And it's what you call a paradise. I'm not kidding when I say this. Perfect.
Good.
All the people, this is what you call made to order.
Now, the format's going to be pretty informal. I'll ask you some questions, and they basically just roll along.
Right to it, sir.
All right, first I have to make an announcement for the tape. It is July 28th, 2001. We're interviewing Mr. Reuben Markowitz at Latham headquarters. The interviewer is Michael Akey. The videographer is Wayne Clark. Mr. Markowitz, where were you born, sir?
Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair, New Jersey. Did you grow up in Montclair?
We left Montclair at an early age. World War I. My father had gotten a job in a shipyard in Kearney, New Jersey. And when the war was over, I was born in 1918. When the war was over, the shipyard, of course, closed. And they moved to Brooklyn, New York. That's where I was brought up.
Okay, you went to school in Brooklyn?
Yeah, grade school.
Grade school. And what about high school?
High school, well, it's a long episode to tell you. My father was a tailor, and my mother was a seamstress. Things got so bad during the Depression. My father had a tailor store. And my mother used to work from the tailor store, sewing. And things got so bad that they foresaw they wanted to get out of the city in years to come. So they had purchased this place, upstate New York, Washington, the name. They converted it into a rooming house, and they were renting rooms there to city people that were coming up. And that was carrying the expenses of the house. See? In time, it got so bad that they couldn't meet rent that they decided moving up to there. So they moved, and I and the younger brother went to high school in Ellenville. They had continued renting these rooms. The father stayed in New York with the store yet. And we used to come up in the summer. She used to rent the rooms. My father stayed there. And this went on for possibly maybe 3-4 years. Oh no, not even that much. And they decided closing up in New York, Brooklyn, and moving to there. So they moved to there, and the question was what to do to make a living. So they decided, they went around to chicken farms. They bought eggs. They bought an old 1925 Dodge, spoke wheels, and they used the car, they pulled the rear seat out. They used the car as a semi-truck. And they'd load in 8-9 crates of eggs, go down to Brooklyn, and peddle it door to door. And in time, they built up a fairly good route. They were doing it twice a week. Till 1934, father passed away. Age 41. So, the older brother, the three of us, the older brother had just gotten his license. So he continued doing what my father was doing, driving the car down to there and all that. And this went on for about another 2 years or so. And, in between, a thing had occurred which was very an important thing. The state decided there was a curve in the road there. They decided to eliminate the curve. And they bought the property from the parents. And they paid them enough that they paid the mortgage off. So things looked better already, you see. So they continued with this business with selling the eggs in New York. And then the oldest brother got a job in Ellenville in a factory. And between that and my mother doing Sinters, and us, of course, we were finishing high school. And between that, that's how we were struggling. I graduated high school, and we didn't have even an auditorium there. Graduated in a local movie. And graduated that night, and that morning I went to work in a local factory there for $10 a week. But it wasn't $10, it was $9.90. Why? Social Security went into effect. It's the truth. Anyhow, I stayed in that factory for about 2 years. And New York City started to build there in the area there, a water supply system. And I got a job there, drilling in the rock. I was 920 feet below the ground, tunnels. And I stayed there for about 2 years. And came draft time. And I knew I was going to be drafted. So I decided I'd go to sign up with a automotive school. And that way I'd get into ordnance. I went to the school, but I did not get into ordnance. They shipped me into the infantry when I was drafted.
Where were you when World War II broke out, Pearl Harbor? Do you remember that?
Where was I? Mm-hmm. Well, World War II broke out. Well, I can tell you a little story on that. This is hard to believe, some of this stuff. I was on pass in Alabama. Exactly where, I can't tell you, I don't remember. Anyhow, that day, Sunday, I had left the USO area there, if I remember correctly, and got on the bus to go back to base, about 100 and some odd miles. And on the bus, all the way back into camp, I never heard anything about war. When I got into camp, I had been in the Army already 11 months, and was supposed to be due to be discharged. At that time it was goodbye dear, and I'll be back in a year. But it didn't turn out that way with me. Anyhow, I come into the orderly room, and I asked the sergeant, "You got my leave papers ready?" And he looked at me, I'll never forget the look that man gave me. Like I was crazy. He says, "Man, haven't you heard?" I says, "What?" He says, "War." Stomach did that. And my episode with the service started.
Now, I'm going to step back a bit. You, when you were drafted, they put you into the 27th Division? Were they at Fort McClellan at that point?
Yes.
Okay. So they shipped you off to Fort McClellan. Was this your first time away from home?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Well, yes, I'd say so.
Okay. What was that experience like, going down to Fort McClellan, Alabama?
I didn't get that. I didn't get that, what you said.
What was the experience like going down to Fort McClellan as a young man?
Well, you're on a troop train.
Okay.
You're on a troop train.
What was Alabama like? For a young Jewish boy who was originally from the Bronx.
That's a question. Well, I'll tell you the truth between me and you. We didn't spend that much time in Alabama because we started training, boot training, and then we went to Tennessee maneuvers in May. And we were there for about at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Came back to Alabama, and then they had the maneuvers in Louisiana. Went to Louisiana, stayed there for quite some time. Came back to Alabama, all aglow, and then North Carolina maneuvers.
What were the maneuvers like?
Well, it's hard to describe. You wouldn't believe it. Makeshift, everything was makeshift. You carried a piece of pipe, and that was simulated a mortar. You carried a makeshift gun, rifle. I'm not kidding when I say this. They had no equipment, none. It was amazing to believe. They had trucks that were from the National Guard, front-wheel drive, no front-wheel drive, old real drive, old Dodgers and all that. This is the kind of equipment they had. And we came back to Alabama. Well, we were there maybe about a month or so in Alabama when war.
Ask him about some experiences with segregation. I mean, I remember he's told me about being in a movie theater one time in the wrong area.
I didn't get that out.
What was, now Alabama was segregated.
Segregated? I should hope so.
Explain, what was that like? What did you feel like when you experienced
Well,
that?
hard to describe. You knew you were in the Army. You were in there for a year. So more or less, you just acclimated yourself to it. That's a period, more or less. Of course, there was troubles. If you went on passing town, you never got yourself into any trouble because those cops, they would wrap a nightstick right around your head. Because you were from New York. You understand? We used to go into the department store to buy anything. We'd say to the girl, well, we used to do it deliberately, more or less. I want a half a dozen of that, a half a dozen of this, and a dozen of... Sure enough, you all talk too fast. I don't understand you. That was Alabama.
Now, were the movie theaters were segregated?
Oh, yes. Oh, sure.
Did you ever get in the wrong place?
Definitely.
What was that like?
You get some awful stares. The locals there would, man, they'd look at you ready to kill you. Same thing on the buses. Okay.
Now, what unit were you with down there? Was it the 165th?
165th.
What were those guys like? They were New York City.
All New York City, man.
Okay.
Sure. Collection of everything you could think of. We even had a boxer in our outfit. Oh, sure. Our teachers, we had everything. Conglomeration. Because at that time, that was the early draft. They were particular who they took.
Right.
Every fourth one, they tapped on the shoulder and he stayed out of line. But of course, when they lowered the what do you call it? The
Standards.
standards, then they came in later on.
Now, how long were you with the 165th?
Let's see, I came down here and I'd say about close to 2 years.
2 years. Okay. But you left them before they went overseas.
No, I went overseas
Oh, you
with
went
them.
overseas with them.
Yes, we went to Hawaii,
Okay.
March 42.
What was Hawaii like?
Rough. See, when we landed there, they only had about 400 National Guard guarding 80 miles of potable beach with nothing heavier than a machine gun. In other words, the Japs could have come in there without getting their feet wet, literally speaking. And we, as soon as we landed there, on the same ship that took us there, they loaded on these National Guard, and afterwards I found out they had taken them to, and they were the ones that wound up in Italy. Meanwhile, with us, we started to dig. They had us digging along the beaches, morning, noon, and night. And then we had to string up barbed wire in front of it. And at first, we didn't even have gloves. This went on for over 3 months. till the Battle of Midway. When it came to Battle of Midway, they alerted us, took us off the beach, and they set us up in the hills. They thought they're going to possibly be, what do you call it, parachute landing there, you know, as anti-aircraft, 30 caliber machine guns. And we stayed there probably about maybe 3 weeks, came back to the camp, and then they started in giving us what you call real training, the type of training for landing. You take it out on a pier, full field pack, 55 pounds, rifle, and they would, you had to jump in the water. You're out about 1,000 feet or so. You had to jump in the water and swim in, breaststroke, no noise. And every so often there was a non-com there standing with a rope. And if somebody couldn't make it, they flipped them the rope and they would drag them out. And then they started in with hikes up in the mountains there to harden you up. And all this was going on, and came through the orders there that they needed men for OCS. And when we saw there, we knew there what the United States, the people in the United States didn't know, the conditions of everything there. We knew one thing: we're not coming back for quite a few years. And I decided this was a chance. I hadn't been home in 18 months. I decided this was a chance, and I put in for OCS. And the oddest thing in the world there was to go before a board. 3 officers, a major that was from artillery, a captain that was from ordnance, and a medical doctor. And they rated you by how you came in, saluted, carried yourself in. And then you sat down there. The entire thing didn't take 5 minutes. The major there, over the papers, he looked at and he said, "You've driven a tractor." I said, "Yes." He said, "You're an ordnance." Just like that. And that was the end of the interview. Amazing but true. And in time, I left home. Hawaii it was, we were on. And came to California. Fort McDowell, California. And there we had orders from a lieutenant general to giving us 10 days delay en route to report to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Instead, they kept us there for 9 days. And we couldn't make anything about it because there was no telephone, no wire, because it was a POE, Port of Embarkation. You understand? We could not complain. And we came into Fort Knox. They were not prepared for us. They didn't have a kitchen, nothing. They didn't have mattresses on the cots.
How many were there in your group?
In my group, I'd say about 150 to 200. And they didn't have anything prepared, nothing. And we slept on our overcoats that night. The next morning, whistles blow, we fall out, breakfast in another company. And come back in about a couple of hours, whistles blew again. You realize we're not prepared for you. You weren't supposed to come in because the 9 days, you understand, but they kept us. And we're giving you passes, 100 miles, 4 days, take off. Well, me and this friend of mine, Joe Drabs from Long Island, went to town, Louisville. We walked past the railroad station. He looks at me and I look at him. Let's go. Well, we knew we were going to get in trouble. So we sat on a train like mummies, just like that. SPs, MPs walking past us, never questioned us. Nobody asked us for a pass. We come to New York, all told, home I spent exactly a day and a half. Of course, it was 4 days,
Right.
and a regular trip down there. And I meet him again, a friend of mine from Long Island. I meet him again at the station. We get on the train, again, mummies. And nobody questioned us. We did not get in any trouble. And that was the start of OCS.
You're already breaking the rules.
Yeah. Now, in OCS, 3 months. Of course, they put you through the gimmicks and everything. They thought they had a small West Point there, you know. And graduated in March 42.
What was the training like? Was it good training, do you think?
No, come on. Good God Almighty, I had coaches there from the 1800s.
Didn't prepare you for much.
Hard specs. You broke them apart, laid it down so you can have a place to rest.
So after that period of time, you're an officer and a gentleman?
No, that was before.
Okay.
Officer and a gentleman was a little bit better. A few degrees better. Anyhow, I was commissioned, and meanwhile, before I was commissioned, way before, I had gone home on pass, out of leave. This was as soon as we finished basic training. And a friend of mine, I asked him if he knew any girls up north, and he gave me a few addresses. So I went up north, and that's where I met the wife. Yeah. And let me see. To continue there, got out of OCS, had a problem. Finding cannons in the tanks. I developed right away quick a loss of hearing. And went to medics, was assigned to a tank battalion, joined it, and after a few visits to the medics, my 201 file was put down, not for overseas duty because I couldn't hear the radio. And I stayed in the States. And on the basis of that, that's when we got married, because I wasn't going overseas. So, I stayed in the States from March 43 till June 44, or
Okay.
July 44.
Now, what were you doing stateside? What was
Different outfits I was sent to. One outfit I was sent to that was taking care of shipping overseas. We had to check the equipment and check the men out on there to see whether everything was up to date before they got on the boat. That's some of the outfits I was with. And in June 44, evidently with the casualty rates that was going on in Europe, my tail end was overseas.
What
Now-
unit did you join? What unit did you, no,
No, not yet.
Okay.
We're getting ahead of us.
okay.
Now, let me tell you something. When I shipped out to Hawaii, I went on the old Aquitania. When I shipped out to Europe, I went on the old Aquitania. 2 ways, same ship. That's what I'm saying, don't get ahead of me. Now, in England, then from England down to France a replacement depot.
Okay, so you're coming in as a replacement.
A replacement depot follows the Army, and as they need men, they supply the men. And I was with the replacement outfit possibly maybe a month or 6 weeks, and I was sent to the 6th Armored Division.
What was it like being a replacement?
Pain in the ass.
Why is that?
Well, you were just a number. That's what I'm saying, just a number. That's right. It seemed as though you weren't here, you weren't there. I'm not kidding when I say this. Amazing.
So you joined the 6th Army.
6th Armored.
What was your reception like?
Well, it was in combat.
Where were they when you joined them?
Orleans, France.
Okay.
You were just a replacement. You were filling in for an officer, somebody who either got killed or whatever the case may be, invalided out, you know what I mean? Come on.
So you're in as a second lieutenant,
Yes,
nice fresh second lieutenant.
yeah.
What did they assign you to? What was your assignment?
My assignment was a Company D, which is a light tank outfit. Light tanks are used mostly for reconnaissance and for leading the way, because they were fast. They were about 18 ton, but the gun was a small one, it was 37, a very small gun. And that's what I was assigned to,
So you were in a Stuart.
Stuart.
Okay. What was it like being in a Stuart? Can you describe it? You're a tank commander?
Yes, I had five
Five
tanks.
Platoon commander.
Yeah, I had 20 men under you. Sure. And what was it like? I found out one thing. The officers were stinkers. It seemed as though every officer was always volunteering. He was always wanted to change the color here, the bars here, whatever the case may be. It seemed as though that was it. Upgrading themselves. That's what it seemed like.
How is the Stuart as a vehicle, as a tank? Is it,
Well, it wouldn't take machine gun fire. Repel it. An 88 would go through one end and come right out the other end, very easily, and fast. You were able to move.
how many men in the crew?
4.
4 men.
Yeah.
Let's see, what time of the year was this? Is this July?
July.
July.
Yeah.
Is this before the breakout?
Oh, way before.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
So were you in the bocage at all? The hedgerow country?
Oh, no.
No, you were south of that?
We came to this SAAR.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the primary job of your platoon? Was it reconnaissance or?
Reconnaissance.
Okay. Well, now what was a typical mission like?
Well, your job going out and reconnaissing, looking around and reporting back on a radio what you've seen, the roads, the hills, and whatnot.
Were you generally told to engage or not engage the enemy on reconnaissance?
No. Once in a while, if you engaged anybody, it was always light, like rifle fire or whatnot, but it wasn't anything heavy.
Okay. That wasn't your job. Your job was just to.
Your job was making sure you reported everything you seen, so in the back, they were able to make out their maps, and this was it. When they made a drive of any sort, they had everything prepared.
What was like life in the 6th Armor? Was it a good unit?
That's hard to say, because in combat, there's no describing that, because you're not living, you're existing. That's a fact. I'm not kidding when I say that. Because a lot of times the kitchen isn't there. You have to eat K rations or C rations, whatever the case may be. So you had to make do all the time. And most of the time, a lot of times, you were out in the field, of course. Houses, blown up houses, you were in a cellar. Your conditions wasn't what you called, they were primitive.
How'd you feel being a tanker as opposed to an infantryman?
Well, at least you didn't walk.
It's interesting, the tankers loved being tankers, or preferred being a tanker over an infantryman. The infantryman preferred being an infantryman over being a tanker.
Yes and no. There's at times they loved you at night. They'd always crawl under the tank for some protection, you understand? But when the morning came, get your ass out of there because you may draw fire.
Right. Didn't have any problems of being parked on soft ground with guys underneath, did you?
Lots of it. Lots of it. Yeah,
They learned that the hard way?
you're not kidding. That's why in the front of the tank you carried a heavy 3/4-inch cable. One could pull the other one out. Oh, yep.
What was your first major action?
First major action was in, what would I say? Sauergemeinde, Sauerbracken, Vorbach. There was a bunch of them there. It was all in Nancy. It was a bunch of areas there we were in. Metz, the devil was the name of that city. I forget for the moment. City, it was a fortress.
Metz?
Metz. We were in a French cavalry barracks there. We had moved into, once we had taken the place, we moved into there. And very primitive.
Really?
You wouldn't believe it.
What, was it difficult taking Metz?
Oh, what a fight. Oh, yes. Yeah. 5th Infantry Division, there was a bunch of us there. Yeah. They would, Infantry Division, oh my. That's the way they worked it. They staggered it.
You facing mainly Wehrmacht? You were up against mainly Wehrmacht?
I still didn't get that.
You were facing, the Germans were mainly Wehrmacht, regular infantry?
Hillbach? No, I didn't get that.
Were they regular German infantry you were up against?
Oh, sure.
It wasn't SS or...
The SS? Oh, yeah, now and then you ran across them. Oh,
Oh.
sure.
Now,
Especially up in tanks.
okay, what was the difference between fighting the two? Was there any difference?
Oh, yes. SS never give up. They fought to the last man. They were so impregnated with that thing from childhood that they would not give up. A regular German, he'd surrender. And not only that, an SS, if he was taken prisoner, was as a rule.
So you didn't take many SS prisoners?
No. We had a funny thing occur now in our unit. They always sent the prisoners back with this one kid from New York. He was Shorty, and they used to call him Shorty. That was his name, Shorty. And every time he took the prisoners back, they always tried to escape. And after a while, evidently headquarters got smart. Said no more sending him back with them.
Now, you were in the Bulge?
Yes.
About where were you
In
in?
the Bulge? Oh. We were in Metz, France. We pulled back, after all that fighting in the SAAR, we pulled back at the Metz for rest and recuperation. We weren't there 3 days. The Bulge started. And right away, we were alerted. And they started to bring, certain tanks that needed replacements and fixing and whatnot. Everything started to go on 24 hours a day. And we got the orders and we started moving north. That was north. Metz, France, 50 degrees. The further north you went, temperature started to go down. And in Luxembourg, the bottom part of Luxembourg, see, I was part of an advanced party. Before a division would move out, they always had an advanced party go out and feel the ground first. And we couldn't go on the roads. Snow. We had rubber tracks from the fighting down in there. We had to stop on the road, and we had to put steel tracks on for traction. Otherwise, we couldn't go. The further north we went, the worse it got.
What's it like living in a Stuart in the cold?
You had a walk-in freezer.
That's never warmed up?
You couldn't. There was no heaters. And not only that, we had a little stove, a little gasoline stove that you can cook with. And used to put in the middle on top of the transmission, but you had to watch. You had to keep the what do you call it, the turrets up, open. because carbon monoxide. And then we had another funny thing happen with that once we were into the Bulge. See, as I was explaining to you before, we hadn't gotten there yet. Once we got into the Bulge and we started to use that, we found out problems. The tank came a little warmer than outside. Outside was 8, 10 degrees, 0. Start to drip from the ceiling.
Condensation.
Condensation. We didn't know it. Into the guns, the cannon, and into the machine guns. And this one time we went on a patrol, came back. Luckily we hadn't tried to fire a gun because we couldn't. We didn't know it, they were froze up. So after that, standard orders came out. Every time you went in there, used that thing, you had to cover them with a small piece of tarp, the breech. You understand? Should drip off it.
Interesting.
Everything it did, you learned the hard way. No matter what the hell it was the hard way.
So you were in the recon unit. The regular tank platoons were what, Shermans?
Shermans.
You ever have any experience with those?
None. Except working with them. I led in total of, between the Bulge and before we got to the Bulge, I led a total of 19 attacks, task forces. Because of the lightness of the tank, we'd always be up front. Yeah.
Dubious distinction.
You'll be feeling away more or less. Right.
What was fighting like in the Bulge?
Oh, that was rough. That was rough. We had so many incidents, it's hard to even to start describing them. One incident I will tell you, that was at the beginning of the Bulge. It was in Neuchâtel, Belgium. And we were supporting an engineer company acting as infantry. They didn't have enough infantry there then. And this was about 12 o'clock at night. And somehow or other, evidently everybody there was asleep. And we were backing them up. And I was on duty. And I look around and I see people moving. For a second I couldn't understand it. And I looked again, and then I saw one white uniform. And I realized right away the Germans had come through. And I alerted the other tanks quick. And I had, what do you call it, telephone with the engineers, with their commanding officer. And I alerted him right away, and we started to shoot. Well, I shot this group that was in between our two tanks. And the one guy I shot, all kinds of colors flares. He was carrying flares. We figured out afterwards what had happened. All red, green, everything you could think of was flared. They figured it out the next morning. There was over 200 of them laying out there. They had had a major attack, battalion. And what had happened with the flares, he was carrying flares, and once he got through, he was supposed to set up a flare so they can, and they got confused because of all the different colors. So they attacked. By that time, everybody was alerted.
Excuse me, just a second. We're going to
Surely.
change tape. So the attack was thwarted because of the flare. All the flares went off at once. How was the infantry and tank cooperation between the two?
Always was good. Always was good. For one reason. Every time you had anything to do with them, you always made sure there was a runner in between you and them.
Oh, they're using runners.
A runner.
Okay.
Always a runner. That was primary. What do you call it? Radio? No. Because sometimes they were on a different frequency.
Okay.
You understand? Sure.
Later on, I guess, with the Shermans, they had radios attached to the back.
Yeah.
Okay, but you
I
didn't-
never saw him.
No, okay.
I never saw him.
Any other episodes you can think of in the Bulge?
Too many.
Well, one or two more.
One or two more. Well,
We'll wait for the, we'll get the rest when we get the manuscript.
okay. Also, in New show, I had a task force there. They were guarding the
Crossroads?
crossroad. And bitterly cold night, maybe 10 below zero. And clear as a bell, moon. And let me see, there must have been about 2 or 3 medium tanks, 2 or 3 TDs, which was tank destroyers, a couple of platoons of infantry, half-tracks, and my platoon. And they were guarding these 4 crossroads. And everybody was asleep. A German half-track, medical, went through it, and nobody heard it. It went down the road about a half a mile before I realized that something had gone on, because I myself was dozing. And I radioed back to the CP. The CP, they sent 2 men out and stopped it and took them prisoner. A half-track.
Better a half-track than a Panther.
Yeah.
Did you run into German armor very often?
Armor?
Tanks?
Not. The only time we ran across them was one thing about the Army. They had a very, very bad habit. Always gang up. They always liked company. They were always told space, but they never listened. And these 5 medium tanks had gone around a bend, and an 88, half-drawn, stood on a hill above them. And he just politely took off number 1, number 5, and 2, 3, and 4 could not move. And then he politely took 2, 3, and 4 off. Didn't waste any ammunition. And we overran him in the back, the gun, and killed the crew. And that's when I first looked at an 88. Something to look at, because the sight next to it was a Zeiss. And when you looked into that, I'm pretty sure if somebody opened up his mouth at 1,800 yards, you could damn near count teeth. There was no way you could miss. No way. And this was, by the way, a horse-drawn unit. Horse-drawn.
Now, was it the anti-aircraft mount 88, or was it the regular
Regular
anti-tank?
88.
Okay.
Regular 88, artillery, you know, field
Right,
artillery.
right.
Yes. You know.
Ask him about the first time he saw a Messerschmitt 262.
Oh. Your first experience with an ME-262. Messerschmitt, the airplane. Jeff.
That was we crossed the Rhine, and about maybe 60, 70 tanks sitting on a fair-sized hill. And they were all out eating, K rations, C rations, whatever the case may be. And it was just getting, the sun was just going down. And this German jet came out of 2 little hills with the sun at his back, just perfect. And he came down and did a little strafe job. He turned around, came back the second time. Well, I was at a tank by that time, and I shot at him. But we were taught 6 and 5 leads, but a jet you had to take about 8 or 10 leads. And I know one thing, everything that I shot was way the hell behind him. And not only me, I don't know how many other tanks did the same thing.
What was going through your mind when you saw that thing whizzing by?
You didn't have a chance to think.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he turned around and he made a third pass, but that was his mistake. Because by that time, all the tanks were alerted, everybody was in there, and when he flew, they threw a shower of fire in front of him, and he flew in and disintegrated.
So you got credit for a...
Oh, I didn't. No, not me.
What, were the stewards pretty reliable in the cold?
Oh, yeah, we didn't have no problems. No. Transmission was, what do you call it, automatic.
Okay.
You had a little handle. You had twin Cadillac engines that were tied into one transmission. You can go 55 miles an hour. Oh,
Right
they
along.
can move. Oh, yes, they can move.
What was it, now, as a reconnaissance unit, what was your biggest concern? Was it mines or...
Mines, mention mines. You've got a source subject. My own tank, twice, I had the tank knocked out. Mines. Hit the mine, pick the tank up, flip it down like that. And they got, of course, different vehicles. Tanks were, what do you call it, the Germans had that Teller mine. Big thing, set in the roads, most of them. And they were a deadly item. And most of the time when you had a minefield, they always had an 88 to cover it. Because if you bypassed it, the 88 would, oh, there, tactics was not what you called sloppy. They were good, tactics.
That's interesting. You were involved in the Rhine crossing? You crossing the Rhine?
Crossing the Rhine, no,
No.
was not involved. The only thing I did was crossing the Rhine was we went on a pontoon bridge. It was a funny feeling. Come down a little bit of hill to get on there, and then on here, as you're going along.
So once you were across the Rhine, what were you, where'd you go?
Oh, Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
We fought through Frankfurt.
What was, were you fighting in the city?
Into the city? Oh, sure.
What's fighting in the city like?
Rough.
Worrying about Panzerfausts and...
That's right. You had to worry about in between the houses and whatnot. A tank shouldn't be there to decoy you. Oh, sure. Yeah.
What was fighting the Germans like at that point? We're into the late part of the war. Were their troops any better, worse?
No, it was the same.
Same.
It was the same. If it was an SS unit, they would not give up. Fact is, in Frankfurt, we had ran across an SS unit that was officer cadets. They were all from 16 to 18, and none of them would give up. They fought to the last man. They delayed the advance so that they took 2 infantry divisions and worked around the city and isolated it, rather than hold the whole works up. Because they were in a hurry then to get into Germany. You know, we're in Germany, but you understand? And they left them there and they wiped them out there.
As were you aware of, at that point, of the concentration camps?
No.
No.
All we liberated was, what do you call it, PW camps.
Okay.
That's the only thing we ever liberated. I did not see any.
What were the POW camps like?
One POW camps, the United States government made the biggest mistake in the world.
What's that?
They didn't wait for civil affairs to come up behind them. So they opened up the gates, take off. The worst mistake in the world, because they must have had about 3,500, 4,000 Poles, Russians in there. And they've been incarcerated for years, of course. And they went to the town. It was a small town there. And they were raping, burglary. They were doing every damn thing you could think of. And suddenly, Army gets smart. You understand? And they moved an infantry regiment in there to try and gather them up, which thing was succeeded.
Did you fight with any black units? I know there were a number of...
One time, we fought with a black unit, was a National Guard unit from Michigan, and they were a crack outfit.
Infantry or tankers?
Tankers.
Tankers.
And this was a crack outfit. They were good. There was no ifs and buts about them. You know.
Now, were they Shermans or tank destroyers? You remember whether they had...
Tank, a regular tank battalion.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. So once you're through Frankfurt, what happens at that point?
I got to that point, I was doing this. And I was sent back for R&R. And sent back to Chalons, France. And I stayed there for about 3 weeks. Sheets, pillowcases, oh, good God almighty, this was life. Believe me when I tell you that. And I stayed there for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. From there, this was getting toward the end of the war, you know. And from there, I was sent to the replacement outfit to be sent back to the outfit. Mm-hmm. That was the usual procedure, you understand? And I stayed there for about 2, maybe 3 weeks. And then VE Day. So rather than send me back to the outfit, I was sent to England, Lichfield, France, a replacement outfit there. Why there, I never did find out.
So they normally wouldn't send you back to your old outfit?
Not when the war was over.
Okay.
Normally like this, yes, Joe. That is your unit.
Okay.
You understand? So I wound up in Lichfield, England, 10th Replacement Depot. And I stayed there for about a month. They were wondering what to do with me because the point system had just started.
Okay.
You understand? Mm-hmm. And I had lots of points. Hawaii, here, lots of points. So I was put on the boat and sent back to the United States. Now I didn't know when I came in there what I was going to do, whether I was going to go to Japan, whether I was going to stay in the States, or whether I was going to be discharged. I didn't know. And it took quite a while before I deciphered what the hell was going on. Because I suddenly got smart. I went down to the orderly room and got a copy of the Army regulations. And I have found out that, unbeknown to the American public, officers were not discharged. They were transferred to inactive status. And that I did not want. And I studied it, and I come up with the conclusion. Hardship case. I had a wife and a child, and a sick mother. That's what I put down on it. Meanwhile,
Bolton's brothers were overseas at that point, too.
Oh, they were?
And she was a widow. They were both in the Pacific Theater.
Oh.
And I was called in for a board. And they tried to coax me into transfer to inactive status. They gave me a step up on promotion. Not entice me. I requested a discharge. And that's when I was discharged. 4.5 years later. I had 4.5 years and had enough. That was it.
And what did you do after you were discharged?
Well, with the VA, I went to school, taking up tool and die.
Okay, so you took advantage of the GI Bill?
Yes, 1 year. And I found out after the 1 year I was sent to a job was working in Brooklyn, New York. We were living at that time with the wife's parents. And I had found out while working with these tool and die men there, who I was supposed to be under, you know, that was not the place for me. Because they all had the idea you're going to take their job away. And I figured to myself, that's not the place. So at that time, this opened up a garage upstate New York near where my mother lived. And with my brother, my older brother, we decided we'd buy it, get out of the city. And that was it.
So you went into the garage business?
37 years.
I was in the garage business for 7 years.
I didn't get that.
I was in the garage business for 7 years.
7 years? What did you do?
Foreign and antique cars.
Well, I was doing heavy work, motors, transmissions, and whatnot. And after a while, I got so I can't do that. You know why? People didn't have this. So, in time, later, way up later, I put in a front-end machine. And I specialized in front ends. Front ends at least was $15, $20. The average person had the money to pay it.
Now, a general question. How is the equipment, German equipment, compared to the American equipment?
There was no comparison American and German equipment. They out-equipped us 20%.
Really?
I'm not kidding when I say this. They had a rifle, Schmeiser machine gun, light machine gun, which one thing that always caught my eye. With a little clip on a barrel, they could change barrels. Short, medium, or long, distance. You understand? One thing. The 88, you couldn't compare. No American gun can compare with it. None. Their tanks outdid us. Panther, completely different. Completely. They outgunned them. The only reason the American won was for one big reason. Equipment. There was a multitude of equipment. As something got knocked out, pieces would come in, replace it. Which the Germans, of course, couldn't do.
How was the clothing? Uniforms, any different?
I don't think it was too much difference. I don't think there's too much difference, no.
Were your uniforms adequate for...
No, definitely not. Not for the Bulge. Oh, definitely not. We had replacements coming in there, for God's sakes, you wouldn't believe. Yes, wouldn't believe. Yeah. I myself had tank clothing, because I had come in there before. But tank clothing you couldn't get.
How were new replacements treated in your units? The new guy?
Fell into line.
Okay.
Fell into line. Oh, sure, yeah.
Were they generally treated well, or was
Yes,
there a period?
yes, yeah, as a rule, yes.
Okay.
Oh, sure, they fell in, yeah.
Your officers generally fairly good?
The officers, as I said before, earlier, the officers were a bunch of stinkers, some of them. I'm not kidding when I say this.
Yeah,
All they worried about was one thing, promotion, and they volunteered so they can get the promotion. You understand?
They tend to volunteer you.
Definitely. I had a whole affair with that. We had gone out, we were in a SAAR, we had gone out to on a reconnaissance to a German Maginot line. And we had parked there. I left my crew there. I had a Jeep of Infantry with me. I took in the Jeep of Infantry, left the driver there, and gone out to make a reconnaissance. Because there was a burnt-out powerhouse across the blown-out bridge. We went up there and started to looking around. We started to look around, and we saw things there. We figured we had better get the hell out of there, but quick. Because the Germans there were unloaded of them. And not only that, just before I put the glasses down, I noticed There was a German motorcycle, and somebody in a, like a foxhole, had given him a piece of paper and motioned to where we were. So I figured to myself, they're alerted, they know you're there. So we started to get out of there, but then we had a little problem. I carried up the rear. The sergeant led the front. And the kid in front of me started to run. And I had warned him before, don't run. We were going along a ditch. Crouch. Maybe they haven't seen us yet. And this kid started to run. And I warned him. I told him right then and there, I says, do that once more and I'll kill you. I would have, to save the rest of us. And we come up to the tank, and it's about maybe a quarter of a mile away from where we were. And the tank crew had seen already what was going on. They knew more than we did. And the Jeep and the tank both turned around, were ready to take off. And I get on a tank. I'm not in the turret. The kid, the one I threatened, I'd shoot him, jumped up. This was something to see, just like a comedy in a movie. He jumped up and his tail end was in the air and the Jeep pulled out from under him. And he's laying in the road. And then just at that time, they brought us under fire. And I thought at first he got hit, because he laid there in the road, he wasn't moving. So then I see he started to crawl. Well, he was to crawl maybe 25 feet. But that crawl was an awful long time. Anyhow, I fired out 2 boxes of ammunition, machine gun, firing to counteract. And he comes up to the tank, and he lays on top of the driver's periscope, right on top, and he's yelling out, I can't see. Well, I get off, mind you, I hadn't been in the tank yet. I get off the top, get down to him, and I pulled him and turned him halfway over, scared to the no end. And there was a big hook you can use for towing. I said, hang on to that. And he's hanging on to that. Meanwhile, the Jeep is gone. Oh, he's gone. And we come, on the way out, here I am shooting another box of ammo. And we come into camp. Not camp, but where we were. And Jeep had reported him missing already. Here I come in with him hanging on there. And I had an episode a while back before that why I was never turned in for a medal. My assistant driver had come to me showed me a letter from home that he won $800 in a crap game. And at that time, to counteract black market, the Army had issued a policy. You couldn't send home more than your base pay. And he was only PFC. He was $100 a month. So it would take him 8 months to get rid of the money. So I signed a slip of paper for him. It's a legal gambling debt, which was, and somehow or other got through personnel. And he got rid of the money. Fine, this months later, before this incident happened, when I'm telling you with the tank with this kid, we're getting prepared, ready for an attack. And we got the maps, everything set. And I'm the last one to leave the seat. The captain, Markowitz, I talked to you. He said, how much money did that kid give you to get rid of the money? So I looked at him. I was indignant. The kid was part of my crew. I said, nothing. He says, I wanted to know one thing. He went to every officer here, and nobody would sign it, including me. And he said, you signed it. And you know, to the day that man was killed, he did not believe me. And that's why he held it against me with that medal. He would not allow it. That shows you how the officers work.
Yeah.
as a whole, it was better being an enlisted man. You had more friendship, more comradeship than you did as an officer.
So, you didn't like being an officer?
No. It had brought me back to the States at that time. I got married. How could I object?
Any, let's see, VE Day, you were where?
VE Day,
VE.
I was in Chalons, France.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you came home and went into the garage business. And you went into the garage business?
No, I went into the VA, the school I had gone into.
Okay.
And what was I doing at that time? We were getting $90 a month. Of course, we wasn't much then. And we were living up with the wife's parents. And I got a job at night, 3 nights a week, working in the post office to supplement that. That went on for 2 years. Meanwhile, I rarely ever seen him. The only time I seen him was weekends. That's right.
I was born when he was overseas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was born. What an episode that was. Everything was an episode there. You might think I'm joking, but I'm telling you a fact. This was in the SAAR. He was born in November, and wife had written me a letter when she was doing all. So I went back to Division Rear to see the Red Cross. And I said, we were not getting the mail. I said, look, when that cable comes through, do not put it in the mail. Put it in the orders, which we were getting every day. You know where it went? So it was 3 weeks later before I found out that he was born.
There's a couple of things that you've donated, and I just want to...
Shoot. Keep you here half a night.
Hey,
I can keep you here.
I get paid to do this. I get paid to listen to stories. Yeah.
Actually, Michael, I do car restorations myself, and I'm also a professional historian by training.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're going to have to talk about. I have an Austin Healy. Where did you find that?
This was taken off a prisoner, PW.
It just something that you decided you took a fancy to?
Oh, there's another incident.
Can you
You
hold
wanna
that
put
out
Go ahead.
straight so I can
I'll
see
tell
it?
you another little incident pertaining to something like this. I'm waiting for the light to light.
Yeah, it's, yeah, just hold it up
Just hold it up.
so I can see.
Hold up the metal or the
Yeah,
buckle.
so I can
There we go.
focus in on it. Okay, that's good.
Now, what's the story?
This was taken just from a PW, that's
Okay,
all.
but you had another story?
Yeah. When we had crossed the Rhine, there was a discrepancy with my pay. So I went to Division Rear to straighten it out, finance. And Jeep with a driver, and we were going on the Autobahn, one of the roads. And suddenly we came under artillery attack. And we vacated the Jeep, ran down the road maybe 300 feet. Came to culvert. Under the culvert, we come there, both of us, puffing. I turn around and look, and I see a German is there. So quick, out came the 45, and I'm ready to. I see he's not moving. I turn around, really give him a look over, and I find out he was an SS. And he was dead. Now, he had his pants leg pulled up like that. And I see a sheath in there. Curiosity got the best of me, of course. Took a look. He had a dagger in there. The most beautiful thing you ever seen in your life. Thing was about 9-10 inches long. It had a knurled handle with the swastika on it in the middle. Gorgeous thing, chrome-plated, gorgeous. When I saw that, I thought to myself, good God Almighty, if I come home, that's coming with me. But, lo, it never happened. I put it away in a tank, never remembered where, never found it. That was it. That was the end of it.
Melted with the tank.
And this was found...
From a PW.
Can you,
I think the same one. I think the same one, if I remember correctly. A young kid, maybe 17.
Can you tell us about this fellow, how you
No,
ran
he
across
just,
him?
just walked out of the woods, threw his hands up in the air, and that's it. He surrendered.
He was a kid.
Yeah.
Let me see the cover of that one.
He had an overcoat on there so long, it was right down to his heels.
What did you
Young
think
kid.
when you saw a kid like that?
Okay,
Huh?
got it.
What did you say to the young
What
fellow
did I say to him? I asked him how old he was.
in Yiddish?
In Yiddish. He says, Zibbison, 17. Well, I gave him a kick in the ass, and I said, you're not 17. I said, you're 15. You got a fuzz on there. You haven't even shaved.
And let's see. This is a picture of you and your steward,
Yeah,
and that's what, 30 cal
that's in the SAAR.
in the SAAR. And
When I was commissioned.
still have your uniform?
Story. Another story. That's when I was about a month in the service in Fort McClellan, Alabama.
Okay, got it.
You want to hear that story?
Sure.
Yeah. I had a footlocker.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sent it home, my uniforms and everything in there. And we had a flood, 1955. Creek overflowed
Hurricane
from the back.
Oh.
Huh?
Was a hurricane, what hurricane was that? Agnes?
I didn't get you.
That's okay.
And the creek overflowed from the back, and we were flooded. Everything in there was, because the silt, everything in there, you couldn't salvage anything. Took it to the landfill, and that was the end of that. So I never saved anything of that. Couldn't.
What was your overall impression of your service experience? Is there any one thing that you come away with?
I'll tell you one thing, it took away 4.5 years of your life. Try it. No joke. And no matter how much time Mother asked me sometimes something, said, you always bring back the service. She can't imagine. She has an idea, but she can't imagine what the hell you went through. You know?
So you're proud of your service experience?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
You have the last word now. Any
Any
final
other
comments?
comments? Too many.
Too many?
Too many.
It's been a wonderful interview. We appreciate it, and thank you very much. And
Sorry they've taken all your time with this.
Oh, no.
If I had my memoirs here, I can really keep you company.
Well, there's a chance of getting, well, Art says there's a chance of getting these.
Mhm.
So we'd love to be able to have a copy of that in
And
our
for
collection.
a moment, don't think it's complete. It isn't.
Those kind of things are never complete.
And the odd thing is with that, in Century Village where we live in there now, they had a course there with memoirs. And I joined the course. 11 women and 1 man. And you know what we used to do? She'd give you a subject, you'd write on that subject, and then you'd come back to the class, and the class would all comment on it. You understand?
It may
That's
be
what
interesting
started me.
talking to his brother, too.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
his brother, yes, his older brother was in the Pacific Theater
Okay.
in New Guinea, Australia. Where else was Izzy?
I didn't get
Where
you.
else was Izzy?
Your older brother, where was he?
Oh, all 3 in the service. He was in all 3 different ranks. He was in Australia and New Guinea. He was with an ordnance unit. And Dave, the youngest, he was with the engineers. He was with an oil pipeline outfit, laying oil line along the Burma Road.
Oh,
He's deceased.
All three-
The older brother still lives in Ellenville part of the year, and he's similar to my dad. He can sit here and tell stories also.
well, we'll have to see if we
One
can
thing,
get him.
and one thing I will definitely comment, all three of us had, the hell you call it again? Just a second, I can't think of the word. We all were taking care of mother. All had,
Allotments?
what do you call it, from,
An
what do you
allotment?
call it again? Taken out of your pay.
Yeah, an allotment.
Yeah, an allotment, all three of us. We made sure one thing, she was able to get along.
That was another thing that was apparently unusual, in that all three of them who were hurt, really the only siblings, were all drafted at the, were all in the military at the same time. I guess the policy was that they would never take all three. They would never take all of the children at one time, but apparently that was not the case with them.
See, the problem there was, when the youngest one was drafted, it was in 43, the older one was already in New Guinea. I was in Hawaii at that time. There was nobody that protested.
Yeah.
You see? So,
I think that was after the sinking of that one ship with the five.
Sullivan.
Sullivan,
Yes, the
sure.
Sullivans. There was
They
some
don't wanna
policy
take
right
them.
afterwards in terms of taking all children in,
Right.
from a family.
especially that was the case at that time, my mother was sick. But they took them. Yeah. There was nobody to protest. Understand? We didn't even know it.
Yeah.
We didn't even know it. Because my mother did not write English. She was a refugee from Lithuania. And every letter we wrote to her, she had to go to a neighbor to read. Everything she wanted to send to us, a neighbor had to send it to her. Under those kind of circumstances, sure. The father, he had a little bit of an episode in his life. The worst place in the world for a Jewish person was to be in the Russian army. He was drafted. He was in there for 6 months. And he got in a fight with a sergeant. He beat him up. And he knew he was going to be court-martialed. And he deserted. And he walked across Europe. They got to Antwerp, Belgium. And got on a boat that came to the United States.
Amazing.
That was in 1912. So you see,
It's an interesting family.
this is History Plus.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Markowitz. We
Very-
appreciate it.